Good morning, good evening. It's Conversations with Cornelius. And guess what, y'all? You see who I have with us. The lovely Miss Genesis Martin with me, who I had the pleasure of meeting via Clubhouse. Yes, Encountering God with Bishop Aisha Benet Bradley. We are grateful for that room, but we are also grateful for the professional service that she brings to the body of Christ, not only as entrepreneur, but also as intercessor, as mother, as therapist, as clinician. We have with us Miss Genesis Martin. If I was in church, I would say after the A&B selection from the choir, the next voice you would hear would be Miss Genesis Martin. But since we're not in church, we're on Conversations with Cornelius. We give it a round of applause to this magnificent lady who we call now our friend, our co-laborer, and our counselor. Hey, give it up for Miss Genesis Martin on Conversations with Cornelius. Welcome to Conversations with Cornelius. I am your host, Cornelius. Today, you will be engaged, entertained, and educated. Stay tuned. You are about to be CC'd. It is Conversations with Cornelius. All right, we're back, y'all. We're back. I'm giving y'all all the church stuff now. She has this wonderful curriculum. Let me just say, it's a lot, and we're gonna unpack it in the interview. That's how we're gonna do that. But without further ado, give us a lovely round of applause for Miss Genesis Martin. Miss Genesis, how are you doing today?
I am well. I am happy to be here with you and, ready to go. Ready to go. How are you?
I am fabulous. I'm elated that you're on with me. I've enjoyed our newly found friendship. I enjoyed you the day I first heard you, and I was just like blown away by what you were sharing. Not only that, your skill set and your spirit, because sometimes we're competent in the area, but then you need to understand behind our competency and character, there's a spirit that engineers all of that. So I was picking up on the spiritual, I was picking up on the social, I was picking up on the scholarship, I was picking up on the service. So I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to listen to you on that day.
Mm.
And I'm glad that you're here. So, hey, tell me, Genesis, therapist, mother,
Mm-hmm.
pescatarian,
Mm-hmm.
PLLC,
Yes.
entrepreneur. How do you juggle it all?
Wow, that's a great question. Very carefully. Okay. I actually, it was funny because even though the pandemic was very difficult for a lot of people, it actually made things fall into place for me. Okay. How God turns, it takes beauty from ashes. And when counselors and therapists and clinicians were once in the office, we were able to now do therapy online. And so I do it from home. So that gives me a lot more time to do other things, right? To be able to be a mom, to be able to take care of home as a homemaker as well, right? To be able to take care of my clients and to continue to develop the business.
So the pandemic was actually a godsend for you as it relates to shifting and managing and prioritizing. Is that what I'm hearing you
Absolutely.
say?
Absolutely. It gave me that freedom, right? From working from home, there's no commute, there's no lost time. If a client doesn't, has to cancel, or if there's some space in between two clients, there's none of that when you're at home, right? I can maximize on the time of working from home. So that sort of streamlined my life a lot better. Even though it's a difficult situation with the pandemic, right? I was able to find some good in it.
Well, let me say this, the extroverted me, and I'm very extroverted.
Mhm.
I love people. I love the commute. I love the hustle and bustle. I love the blowing of the horns. I love the testosterone that I get in the adrenaline rush of being in rush hour traffic. I love it. I love bells. I love whistles. So for me, I'm trying to adjust
Mm-hmm.
in this sedentary space and learn how to maximize my gifts, my talents, my passions, and my callings, which, can be done from home, but
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing like the common touch for me. So kudos to all of you individuals who love sitting in the office at home, getting it done. Thumbs up. But for me, I'm a busybody. So how would help me? Just let me shifting because it's already shifted. Help me, the busybody that I am. What are
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that you would recommend? How I need to just kind of think, probably shift my thinking
Mm-hmm.
and shift my energy so it can be more rewarding for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me first say that the pandemic has been a worldwide trauma, and people don't really necessarily acknowledge that. It was a trauma. It still is. It's sort of an extended trauma. And so people have had to adjust emotionally in many different ways, right? And like you
Mhm.
just said, you're an extrovert. You get your energy from external things, right? People, sounds, all of the five senses and such. So for you, right, I would recommend, and I do have some clients that are extroverts that are like, if I don't get out of this place, I'm gonna blow. Then I recommend that people, if you're working from home, right, that you make sure that you are getting out. We focus on the social aspect, or if you're not able to get out, to bring people in. If you have a social circle, right, where you trust, everybody kind of says, listen, this is how we're living in terms of keeping ourselves safe during this pandemic. And you have people over and you interact with, your social bubble, if you will. But you really do have to get out. You have to take those drives. You have to do some of the things that you used to do, right? Because for me as an introvert, listen, even the grocery shopping, Cornelius, I do it online. They put it in the trunk. I drive off. You, you understand what I'm saying? So for you, you need to go to the grocery store. You need to go and get the fresh air. You need to continue the social activities as safely as possible.
See, the wife and I fight ferociously
Not
about,
ferociously.
yes, about what do you call it? Calling and getting the groceries, whatever y'all.
Yes,
No, I need to push the buggy. I need to go down aisle 7. I need to go past. This that ain't grocery shopping to me. Is going to the store,
yeah,
not somebody bringing my goods out. I need to touch it, but I get
yes,
it. I
yeah,
get it. I
yeah.
get it.
So you
And
go
you get
ahead. You do that. You know what I'm saying? All the extroverts are in the grocery store. The introverts are in the parking lot getting it picked up,
it.
right? So you can tell
Right.
who's who at this point. But it's
Listen.
important for you to get out as much as you can. And that sounds cliche, but I mean that, right? You need to be able to interact with people. And so don't hold yourself back. This thing is not going away. It's not, you know what I mean? Like we have to learn how to live with it. And so it's time to start, adjusting and moving out and starting to have those five senses for you.
For me, right.
For you. Yes.
Yeah. Now, then tell me more about the business and how you came into the business. Because, of course, I have, as we say, curriculum vitae or resume or bio here. I have
Mm-hmm.
it on from the way we met and what you sent me. But talk to me now about your business and these professional services that you have that I could benefit from too as pastor, and how you're that liaison between the social and the spiritual.
Yes. Okay. That was a lot in that
I'm
one.
sorry. I'm sorry.
So I might have to ask for a little refresher towards the end. I love to tell how I became a therapist actually, because I'm not going to date myself, but my bachelor's degree is in psychology. Okay.
You're not gonna date
And then
yourself.
when I got out of there, I said, I cannot take one more test. I cannot write one more page. I can't. So I ended up, I didn't go on into therapy or counseling. And back then you had to have a PsyD or a PhD to do it. Okay.
What's a side
So
D? Help me
that's
out.
a doctor of psychology,
That's what I thought. Okay.
right? Or a PhD in psychology, right? And
Mhm.
I was like, there is no way. So I went into business. I just slid on into the business world and I ended up in corporate America and did very well in corporate America, not because I had such a business acumen, but because I am just so good at interacting with people. I am able to, I hate to say the word read people because it almost seems manipulative, but it's more like being able to see and empathize and feel people. And so I was able to build relationships. So I worked for some of the big boys like PepsiCo and um, Nestle USA, right? And I did operations management and all of that. Well, at one point there was, there's been reorgs and layoffs and this and that. So at one point there was a layoff. I was at Nestle and I decided to go back and get my master's. And at this point, the counseling field had developed, right? So you could get a master's degree, not a PhD or a PsyD, but a master's degree in counseling and go ahead and start. So that's what I did. And I completely pivoted, had three kids. My youngest one was 6 months old at the time, and pivoted and went back and got my degree in counseling with a specialization in marriage, couples, and family counseling. Okay. Now, this was definitely God ordained because the doors just opened and opened and opened and opened. I ended up with a 4.0. I'm not ended up. You can't end up with a 4.0. But
None.
the reason that's important is because I didn't even know what I had coming out of undergrad. I didn't care. Give me the degree, right? So
Thank
then,
you, Lordy. Thank you, Lordy. Not
yeah,
the summa cum laude, not magna cum laude, but thank you,
no,
Lottie.
yes, thank you, Lottie. Exactly. And when I saw the GP, I was like, oh. So I got a 4.0 because I looked at it as number one, God was with me, okay, through every step of that way. And I looked at it as job training. So I really took it seriously in understanding how the brain works and so on and so forth. And also, the marriage, couples, and family, I really had a heart to keep marriages together and to keep families together and to provide tools and, just strategies and things to help that. I think there was more that you asked me about.
Well, that's great. And
Hmm.
I did, and I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. That's your business and how you got there. Thank you. Thank you
Yes,
for the summa cum laude, the magna cum laude, and the thank you, Lottie. We're
that's right.
grateful for that.
The current business.
Unpack now
Hmm.
how you are that liaison
Yes.
that connects and heals people within the body of Christ
Yes,
because we need this service that we've totally overlooked,
absolutely.
especially in the context of the African American experience.
So, in terms of, okay, when you are a clinical therapist and you're licensed, right? Part of your ethical obligation is not to sort of push your biases, values, opinions, or anything, your spiritual beliefs, political, none of that onto your clients. So, I have clients who are not Christian and not part of the body of Christ, and I have clients who are. The clients who are Christian, who are kingdom, it is so much easier because I weave in the Bible. And it is so much easier to, like, for example, one of my things that I teach, I'm a teaching therapist, is that our thoughts create our feelings, Cornelius. Okay. So if I'm talking to somebody who is a Christian, I can go further and say, understand that we are to submit our thoughts to Christ. We are to renew our minds, right? This is biblical. So as I'm using that, it ties in because our thoughts create feelings. Feelings come from thoughts. Okay. So that's why that's important. Because I remember in the Bible, I'm like, submit every thought, take it captive to Christ. This is why it's important. Because when you do take your thoughts captive to Christ and submit them to the Bible, right? Then now your feelings are following your thoughts. Your behavior is following that. So how do I become an asset to the body? Well, I prayed and I said, God, I only want to I only want clients that are Christian. There are a lot of therapists out there that are not Christian, and they can have, the other clients. I want Christian clients. And so that's what I'm believing for now, because in the body of Christ, yes, of course, we need to pray, we need intercession, we need deliverance. We also need to understand how the mind works. This is wisdom. And when you have a kingdom therapist, right, you understand that I pray before sessions, that it's not me, but it is God through me that is able to help the people who are sitting in front of me, where God can show me a way to speak to you, Cornelius, that I would not know otherwise, so that you can hear what I'm saying, right? Like as a pastor, when people say, Pastor, you were speaking just to me, you were speaking directly to me, right? That's similar when you have a therapist that's anointed. Does that make sense? And I want
Yeah.
to work directly with the body. So that's been my prayer recently.
Now we're going to stay here just for a minute, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
You are a teaching counselor.
Mm-hmm.
That helps my palate just a little bit absorb the cuisine that you serve,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't hear that phrase, teaching counselor. I don't. You might hear it. You're a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the position I'm in to help influence people become whole and healthy, these are the services that I can refer them to, because I prefer that anyone under my leadership and influence, or is enlightened by my leadership and influence, go see a Christian counselor.
Mm-hmm.
You need to see somebody that understands that you have a firm foundation in a psychological relationship that helps you think better, do better, and feel better. So
Yes.
having you say that really helps.
Yes.
How much, and I know this answer, excuse me. You said prayer.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in your professional life, when I know it began way back in before that, when you talk about prayer and praying for your clientele, how does that begin? Like what is that? What's the routine there?
What does it look like now? Like currently
Yeah.
when so
Hmm.
every day, so I pray throughout the day. I'm not
Hmm.
someone who gets up and prays for 2 hours. I pray throughout the day. I talk to the Holy Spirit throughout the day. And I pray before sessions. I'll look at who's coming up. I'll pray specifically over them. And literally, Cornelius, in the middle of a session, right? When something comes up, because I will tell you that the things that show up in front of me were not in the graduate program. So, okay. So I will sit there for a second and I will wait literally to hear from the Holy Spirit in the middle of a session. Now, they don't necessarily know that that's what I'm doing, but I'll pause and then it will come. And my
Hmm.
faith is always that he's going to be here with me. So I'm never nervous going into the sessions. I'm never nervous if I get stuck on something, because I know that he'll drop the wisdom into me to be able to speak to those people. So it's really just sort of, daily prayer, daily communion with the Holy Spirit, and daily, leaning on him in every session.
That's
I hope that
wonderful.
answered it. Yeah, I hope that
Oh
answers
yeah, that
you.
helps me. It helps me. It eases me to know that the person that is working, and I don't know if that's the right term, or helping me with me, is a praying woman.
Yeah.
And I need that. And we'll get into cognitive behavioral therapy next, just to, give you a gist of where we're going in the conversation.
Okay.
But do you see a lot of pastors coming to you, or have you seen a lot of pastors? And I know that some things are confidential,
Hmm.
coming to you with just us, like needing your service. Like we always say, I'm going to the pastor. I'm
Right.
going to the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm telling folk, go to Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
because possibly I don't have the skill set
Mm-hmm.
to handle some of those things, or I don't have the time to commit to doing it. I can
Mm-hmm.
pray for you,
Right.
but unraveling some of those things, I don't have the time. So, what will be your word to us leaders as it relates to counseling and these services that we could really transform the life of the body of Christ?
So your first question was, do I see I have never had a pastor come to me.
Wow.
Now, never. I've never had
Mm.
a pastor as a client. I do have.
Here's your first one.
Okay, come on with it. Come on with it. I do know some pastors that they can call me up, hey, I have this situation, and we'll talk through a situation, and we'll talk through it from evidence-based practice, right, as it relates to the kingdom. So basically, if I were to speak to pastors, and I would say, listen, there are times, and you can use your discernment as to whether or not this person needs more at that time than prayer, right? So if we're dealing with someone who has a traumatic background and they're having triggers and they don't really understand where that's coming from, that's something that they might want to see a therapist about. That can, like you said, take the time to unravel, take the time to peel back the layers, take the time to carefully walk through that time frame with people so as not to re-traumatize them, right? But so there's a lot. And then, I do marriage counseling. That's a big one. That's a big one too. And there is evidence-based practice for that as well, right? So I would tell pastors to have relationships with Christian therapists that, they could be able to say, hey, this might be an opportunity to kind of help somebody through with some brief therapy, right? Therapy doesn't always have to take a long time. I've had clients that just needed to get through a crisis, right? So we might have had 6 or 8 sessions. Then there's clients that take a year and a half, right? But by the time they're done, they don't need therapy ever, probably,
Mm.
right? Because I teach with tools. Every session, you're learning something, right? So I would tell pastors to engage and with Christian counselors, because if you're not a Christian counselor, and that doesn't have to be your title, you need to be a counselor who's Christian, right? Because the other ones, they're not going to hold necessarily to the principles and the tenets of the Bible. And so there could be, a separation of principle, and that you don't want for your flock.
That answers it. I mean, that answers it. That's a great answer. Your professional terminology, evidence based,
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm trying to do is develop or bring more evidence based therapy to the body of Christ, so we can see that this too is ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Like prayer is a ministry, like my preaching is a ministry, like
Yes.
my teaching is a ministry, like the choir is a ministry.
Yes.
Counseling now
Mm-hmm.
complements all of the other ministries in the church, but we don't have the evidence because we have not partnered with
Mm-hmm.
counselors and therapists to ensure that our people are emotionally whole and mentally
Yes.
healthy and stable. So
Mm-hmm.
I admire what you just said. I'm just eating it up like, oh my God, when can I bring this lady to Nashville?
Good.
But
Good.
not just by way of podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
physically, tangibly put you before people, put you before pastors, put you before
Mm-hmm.
leaders, so that they
Mm-hmm.
understand there's some evidence-based theory
Oh
out
yeah.
there
Oh
that's
yeah.
solid, just like
Yes.
it is with evangelism,
Mm-hmm.
just like it is.
Absolutely.
Let's make this a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting now, cognitive behavioral therapy. I
Yes.
love it. I love it.
CBT. Everybody knows CBT.
CBT.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, and just educate us a while, if you can, about cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. So, to break it down very simply, cognitive behavioral therapy basically says that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior are all interconnected. So,
Mm,
my thoughts create my feelings, and either my thoughts or feelings lead to my behavior, right? Then my behavior might trigger thoughts, feelings, behavior, sort of a circular relationship, if you will. So, but it all begins with our thoughts. That's what cognitive behavioral therapy is. There is behavioral therapy also, which does not factor in the thinking process. It's more like, okay, change this behavior and then you'll be fine, right? So you can tell me all day if I want to lose weight to stop eating whatever, but if I don't know why and I don't know what's prompting me to want this at this time and so on and so forth, it might be difficult for me to just stop the behavior or even begin a behavior, right? Working out, whatever the case may be. So with cognitive behavioral therapy, what we do is we focus on your thought life. We go in and we say, okay, let's look at what do you feel like you need? This is just an example. What do you feel like you need to unlearn? What are some of these things that you need to unlearn about yourself? That's a favorite question of mine because people kind of think that, like, yeah, you know what? I always thought that I wasn't intelligent. We go back and figure out that somewhere in their past, that's what they were told. So we need to undo that negative cognitive distortion, is what it is. We need to undo
mm,
that so that they can be free to say, wait a minute, because I'm challenging that. I'm challenging. I'm like, well, why are you? I'll give you an example, Cornelius. I have a client who's an attorney, right? He's an attorney, which means that he passed the bar and all this. And he was trying to write an article saying he's insecure about his writing skills and reading skills. I said, you're an attorney.
right.
You went to law school. All you did was read and write.
Right.
For him, right? Even though that was the reality, he remembers feeling very insecure about it when he was younger. And so we had to go back and deal, and I don't stay and wallow in the past. We only go back academically to see, where did this problem start? Where did this you know um, perspective, this way of thinking, where did this start? And let me challenge that. What makes you think that you can't read well? Well, this and this happened. Okay, well, how does that relate to now? And so on and so forth. I mean, I can give you countless examples, but basically it's challenging what's called irrational or unhealthy belief patterns. That's one element of cognitive behavioral therapy, because it says a lot of our distress, for example, our anxiety, our depression, all of these thoughts come from things that we believe that are not true or are not healthy or are not profitable. Does not the Bible say, think on these things?
Bing. Listen at
True, noble, profitable, right? Of good report. If you're thinking about those things, you like how I thought, see, I be throwing the Bible. All right. If you're thinking on those things, then you're not going to be thinking on the negative things that maybe mama said to you, daddy said to you in the past, right? You're not going to think that those things are true about you. When we go to the Bible and we say, okay, what did God say?
Mm,
What did God say about you? Which one is true? Mama or God?
mm. Yeah, circumstance or your creator. Right.
Circumstance is good that you said that, because I'm not bashing mama, but mama has her own history.
Trauma.
Yes, that brings her to where she is, right? We're not mad at mama. I don't do, and the thing is, I don't do blame either. I do cause and effect. I do not allow blame into the vocabulary. It's cause and effect. Okay, this happened, so this happened. And it takes the it takes the emotion out of it.
I wrote that down, cause and effect,
Mhm.
because
Instead of blame.
no,
Yes.
no. So stop the blame game.
The blame game has to go. It just has to go. Because And here's another thing. This is another beautiful thing, okay? Is that my behavior is about me and I own it. You can't make me do anything. I own my behavior, right? But you own your behavior too. I can't make you do anything. I can't make you feel anything. I can't make you think anything. You come to the party with your own developmental brain, your own worldview, your own perspective on life, on people, and on politics, on colors, on vacation, on everything, right? So we're all having a similar human experience, but we're all having individual experiences inside that, as individual as our fingerprints. So when two people are speaking together, they will always see a thing differently. Always. You see through your lens and I see through my lens, right? But my behavior, because it comes from my thoughts and feelings, right? My behavior is about me. I can never blame you. You made me do this. I do this a lot with couples. You made, no, no, no. He didn't make you do anything. You chose. She didn't make you do anything. You chose. When we accept responsibility for our own behavior, then we relinquish being responsible for other people's behavior.
Say that
And
again. Say that again.
okay,
Say that
when
again.
we take responsibility for our own behavior, we also relinquish responsibility for other people's behavior. When we take responsibility for our own thoughts, watch this. We relinquish responsibility for other people's thoughts. I have no control over what you think of me, Cornelius. I have no control over that. So many people are walking around worrying about what other people think all day long. Can't talk in front of people, don't want to wear this, don't want to say that, don't this, don't that. You have no control over what somebody else thinks of you. So just be you in front of the Father.
Just
That's
be me,
freedom.
girl.
Is that freedom, Cornelius? Come on, talk to me.
But you know what? We've lived in a society, and our societal norms are such the opposite of freedom
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that when we start getting a sense of freedom
Mm-hmm.
because of the trauma, I I push my way back to the bondage. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes, it
okay,
does. Because we're familiar with the bondage.
okay, okay,
We're familiar with the bondage. And we
okay.
gravitate towards what we're familiar with, right? I don't even like Starbucks. But if I'm in a different city, when I was in corporate America, all over these little tiny
Right.
towns and stuff, if I saw Starbucks, I went because I was familiar with it.
Mm,
That happens with people, relationships. If you're familiar with a very hectic and crazy and chaotic environment growing up, you're going to be familiar with that when you go into a relationship.
wow.
So if you become a part of a relationship like that, that's familiar to you. It's not something that you necessarily fix.
It's what? Say that. What?
It's not something you necessarily look to fix. So if you grow up in a household where everybody's yelling, screaming, cussing, right? Chaos, hectic, all of the things, dysfunction. And then you grow up and you get into a relationship and there's some chaos and dysfunction in that relationship, you would think, oh, I'm out of here. I didn't want to do that. I'm not going to do what I did in the past. That's not usually what happens, though. If you enter into a relationship that's chaotic, it's familiar to you. So you just go on in there, right? And live with it, unless you do the work to free yourself from that dysfunction and chaos. If you don't do the work, that's what's familiar to you.
Now you said something earlier, and we're in this professional spiritual space. I love it. I
Mhm.
love it.
Mhm.
The cognitive distortions or the dissonances that we have.
Mhm.
And currently, I'm trying to complement you in some ways on the clinical side and become a certified Christian counselor.
Mhm.
So I'm learning about these mental fillers and labeling and emotional reasoning and all or nothing thinking. I never, we do it automatically, but sometimes it becomes so normal that we don't even realize what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's why I personally need to see a genesis because I'm a servant, and I was a school teacher and I still teach school. So I'm teaching all day and then pastoring all night, or
Mm.
pastoring all day and teaching all night. It
Mhm.
it, it varies. So I see some things like mental fillers, mind reading, overgeneralizing, personalizing, should and must statements, tunnel vision, like this cause and effect thing. And I'm
Yes.
big, I'm big on the blame.
Mhm.
Now that I see that I'm big on the blame, I see how it unravels or how it surfaces in everything that I do. So,
Mhm.
quick therapy session with me.
Okay.
Just,
Let's do it.
we in this space.
Okay.
Showing up, Genesis, and you gotten some of the back end from yesterday, so you already in that space. Like,
Mhm.
how do I protect myself as a leader from some of these cognitive, what is the word? This
Distortions.
Yes, yes. How
Yes.
do I help me with that? Just help me.
Can you give me an example of, something that bothers you in terms of the cognitive distortion? You can make it up.
Well,
Yeah, you can make
okay.
one up. It doesn't have to be personal to
Oftentimes in the line of work that I'm in, it's all or nothing. Total success or total failure.
you. Mhm.
And when when the execution is not tangible
Mhm.
in my timeline, or
Mhm.
just generalizing for some of my friends, we that distortion takes
I
us place.
failed. Is it I
Yeah,
failed?
yeah, I failed. I
I
failed.
failed.
Yeah.
So here's one thing that I thoroughly believe in, right? When we're talking about performance, for example, you cannot do more than your best by definition.
My
Best
God.
means best
My God.
means is the best you can do, right? So if you've done your best at a thing, then after that it's outside of your control what happens as a result of it, right? And
You
as a
cannot
leader, when you are
control it.
inviting the Holy Spirit into your space, then you relinquish control over the outcome and you do your best. Does that make sense? I'm doing my best. I'm relinquishing control. This is about him anyway. And I trust him that what I gave was what people needed for that moment. Because I'm going to make an assumption and let me know if I'm wrong, is that you're looking at the responses maybe or the reactions or the feedback or whatever that makes you feel like you were a failure at something, right?
Mhm.
Let me say this. Did you hear a bang just now? Did you
But
hear
it's
anything?
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That
If
you
I
got
told you
children.
what that is, we'd all be laughing. So I'll let it go. Um, if you, so
It's
the
good to
feed,
laugh. We can laugh.
we can laugh. So I
We can
have a
laugh.
14-year-old
Okay.
who the door has had to be taken off of her room so many times that there's no hinges anymore. So she has to put the door up and protect the door. And so it just fell. That's what I heard. That's what we heard. Okay.
Time out, time out. Listen, I was always threatened
Hmm.
with that statement.
I'm gonna take your
And
door off.
listen, and you of course, I'm a southerner, deeply
Hmm.
rooted,
Hmm.
5 generations, probably 6 or 7, but
Yeah,
after the fifth, I have no
we don't
record
know.
of.
Right, we
Yeah,
don't know. Hmm.
but I can give you that beginning generation, 1871. Um, I had we'd take the dough off the dough, not the door, the
Yeah, the
dough off
dope.
the heat. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was a threat
yeah.
that never came to fruition.
Oh, it didn't?
No, 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 no. No. But
Mm,
to hear you even say it, and then it become an actualization.
did
I'm
it?
in. I'm in stitches over here.
Did it? So many times that there's no hinges and didn't get it fixed.
Okay, so that's the crash.
That was what that was. So I apologize for that.
Oh
But
no,
now
no.
sliding
That's
back over to what we were talking about. When you're looking at the reactions of other people, right? People are seeing every situation through their lenses. Where does that start? It starts from the cradle through toddlerhood, through the things that they experienced, the meaning that they made of events. This is all of us. The meaning that they made. Move on into school. I wasn't picked for the kickball team. I made the basketball team. I didn't make the basketball team. I was tall. I was short. I was fat. I was skinny. I had braces. I didn't. Nobody liked me. I didn't get invited to the party. I was always popular. Did all of these experiences at home, right? If there's trauma, I watched mom, get beat by daddy or by her boyfriends, right? Nobody was home. I grew up in foster care. Whatever the case, all of these things are shaping your perspective of life to bring them to this moment in time with you. And so you could deliver, right? You could deliver a sermon, Pastor, and it changes my world, right? But over here, this person couldn't connect. Were you a failure?
no.
You're doing your best under the direction and the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and then you release it because you have no control. I just told you how people are showing up.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go back and unravel all of those cognitive all of that stuff, the distortions and the
Mm-hmm.
the shoulds. That's one a thing that I deal with every day also. The shoulds and the overgeneralization and all of that stuff that is coming with people. So they could be looking at your sermon or whatever you're putting on a presentation, whatever you're doing. They are looking at it through their lenses of life. You have no control over those lenses. You're delivering what you're supposed to deliver at your best, and you can't do any more than your best by definition. Did that help a little bit? I feel
Oh my God, did it
okay.
help? Like you said, we're in a hypothetical situation,
Yeah.
just and communicating what you said is great, and the way you said it. Now it's time for my soul to capture and crystallize and make that a concrete thought
Hmm.
and a concrete affirmation in my heart and soul so that I can move without so many cognitive distortions
I'm going
and
to say
begin
this
to
to you.
yeah, and
Let me,
begin to enjoy me, begin to enjoy
absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. Like, let's break it down even simpler, right?
Hmm.
Somebody can say, Genesis, I like your hair. And somebody else can say, your hair looks terrible. Who's right? It's a matter of the lenses that they're looking through.
Mhm.
Somebody might not like short hair. I just recently, in the past 2 months, November, I cut off all my hair. So some people may not like short hair. Some people might love it. So that's where the perspectives come from. Everyone has perspective. So I have no control over what you're showing up with as your perspective. You have no control over that. Who shows up as part of your flock and what
Mhm.
they're coming with. Your job, your business is to do your business. The Holy Spirit does the rest.
Just do your business.
Do
That's
your
good.
business. You really have no control. I mean, people have a hard time with what I just told you. You really don't have any control over what somebody else thinks about you.
Mm. Yeah, do your business. That's
But
it.
if we were in a session, right, we would sit there for a minute. right? Because, we're doing this thing now, but if we were in a session, we would sit there for a minute and go through some real life situations where I would break it down with you so that you could see what I'm saying, right?
Mm.
Because, like you said, you're getting it in the head, but it's got to
Mhm.
drop down, right?
Mhm.
But we wouldn't stop until it dropped down if we were in the session, right? We're not just moving on, right?
Right, right,
Right.
right, right. But it's making all the sense in the world, not only in the pastorate, I mean, professional athletes, the suicide rate is ever
Mhm.
increasing. The
Yes.
percentile is
Yes.
the trajectory of, or let me say, death by suicide.
Yes.
Um, it's every nook and cranny of our culture.
Absolutely.
So people are experiencing the feeling, let me say it this way,
Mhm.
the feeling of failure, even when they're not a failure.
Yes.
And they
And
have
the
allowed the feeling of failure to become so demonstrative that, of course, this is the only way out. This is the win-win for everybody when it's actually not.
So let's unpack that a little bit more, right? You said the feeling of failure. Failure is actually that's the thought. I
Okay.
failed. The
Thought. Okay.
feeling is the disappointment, the sadness, the despondency. Those are the feelings. The thought is I failed. So where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in, it says, how did you fail actually? That's where we start. Well, I didn't, whatever, whatever. Okay, well, what did you do? And we kind of go down that road of challenging this thought that the person actually failed, because that thought I failed is creating the feeling of despondency, right? Of hopelessness. But if
Mm.
if if you can actually see, you know what, I didn't fail actually, that feeling now goes away because feelings come from thoughts.
You so smooth with it. So smooth. She's so smooth. Yeah, she's so smooth with it. Like,
Smooth with it.
yeah, so smooth. Like, oh my God. Like, Genesis, you're really helping me as leader, as learner, as laity, as liaison. Put all the titles on me. Then you're going to help someone whoever is tons of people will be listening to this.
Mhm,
And I'm just grateful that you're helping all of us
mhm,
unpack those thoughts
mhm.
so we can have healthy emotions.
Absolutely.
I'm going through a book now. I should have brought it here. It's called The Emotional Healthy Church.
Mm,
Oh my
mhm.
God. Look at you, right? Listen, write
Yes.
that
Uh-huh.
down.
Uh-huh.
It gives so many good assessments to help us with our feelings
Mhm,
or our emotions,
mhm.
and gives us categories possibly we're adolescents or infants emotionally when we're, you and I, we're in the same peer group. I
Mhm.
mean, but you could be in the summer and fall of your life, but emotionally you're still 12 and 13 and 17
Oh,
years old.
come
Like,
on.
I'm learning that now. That
Oh.
I'm talking to Genesis, who is
Mhm,
seasoned
mhm,
chronologically,
mhm.
physically, physiologically. Oh, she appears to be wonderful.
Right.
But when you peel back those layers,
Mhm.
you're dealing with an 8-year-old child.
Yes.
And like, how do we even handle conversations and the trauma? So let's switch to traumas, not anything
Yeah.
personal,
Yeah.
but because this has got to be a part two. This has got to
Oh,
be.
for sure. I like where you're going because
Yeah.
I'm ready to speak to this. I like where you're going right now. Mhm.
Speak to some of the traumas, and we're at what, 49 minutes, and we haven't done any sponsorships, anything. This has been like
Yeah.
straight talk, like wow.
Yeah. I'm just
But
gonna hit it. I'm gonna hit this
no,
really
no,
quick.
no. Yeah,
Oh,
just but just take your time, but
okay.
speak to these traumas, and then We'll
Yeah.
shut it down and we're good. And then I'm gonna need your cash app if you don't mind, so people
Oh
can sow
wow.
into your life.
Okay. That's not why I'm here, right?
No, no,
Because
no.
this to me, if I could do, listen, if I was independently wealthy, I literally would do therapy for free. I absolutely love doing it. Okay. I'll say this, Cornelius, what you're talking about right now is called emotional intelligence. It is called your
Mhm.
emotional age. Your emotional age. So here's what will happen. We'll go down one path. Let's say that we have a child that's 7 years old who goes through a trauma, whatever type of trauma you want to associate with that. At that point, the emotions, the emotional development becomes arrested. The cognitive development keeps going. So you keep learning, developing, whatever. You can go and move on and go through school and all of these things. But your emotional development is arrested. So whenever there is a trigger in your life, an emotional trigger, you will go back and behave as you did in your emotional age, which may be 7 or 8. So this is why, and I always use the former president as an example. Okay, where yeah, so the man,
Send, send, send the
huh?
wrong tweet, huh? Just send a tweet out.
That's it. So he's 70, whatever, and normally he sounds like that, right? He can talk and he sounds like a grown man. As soon as he becomes triggered, he sounds like he's 10 or 11. He goes right, and people are like, what is wrong with him? Well, that's his emotional age. So those of us in the mental health community can look at it and go, yeah, there was a trauma around that age. Very clear. Now, what does that mean in our personal lives? Well, that's what we see sometimes when we see a grown person throwing things, carrying on like a toddler, right? Or we see a grown person who shuts down and doesn't speak, right? Or we see a grown person who runs all the time. These are not grown people behaviors in difficult situations. So usually if we pull back the layers, we'll find out, hey, something happened at this time, and this is really their emotional age, and we need to process through that to get them through, to release that, to come into their cognitive age and emotional age being the same. That's sort of the easiest, quickest way I can explain that.
Listen, you said a mouthful though.
Okay.
And like you
Yeah.
said, unpacking that, that'll have to be interview number two.
Okay.
I think if I was to do it all over again, and I'm just going to start now, I would encourage leaders in any organization to go some through some type of emotional intelligence training
Mhm, mhm,
for
mhm,
the just for the health, for the overall climate and culture that
mhm.
they're about to be in or possibly influence.
Can you tell me what you mean by the emotional health training? You mean of themselves or the people that they're working with or the people who
All of them,
okay.
all of it, the unit as
Mm-hmm,
a whole, because I need to know your emotional intelligence. I need to know
mm-hmm,
your emotional age.
mm-hmm.
Because I let me just let's get biblical. When I was a child,
Yes.
I thought,
Yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
understood, reasoned
mm-hmm.
as a child.
Yes.
Paul talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
Is he that was his emotional intelligence, correct? What
Absolutely.
he's addressing his emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
When he was a child, he thought, he did, he acted, he reasoned, but when he became a man,
Yes.
watch what it said. God didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I made a conscious decision to put away childish things.
To put away. Mm-hmm.
Put away,
Mm-hmm.
put away.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to do a word study on put away. I need to unpack that a little more
Mm-hmm.
exegetically just for me
Yeah.
because I need to understand the emotional intelligence and possibly the stress and strain and these cognitive distortions that I put on me that are totally unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
that hinder me from reaching my best.
Yes.
So, I'm just
Yes.
in awe of what you're saying.
Yeah. Those cognitive distortions, honestly, that is what trips so many people up. Because if you have someone who is trained to challenge you on those, and I don't
Mhm.
mean challenge in a negative perspective, have a conversation, say, hey, is that really what that meant? Did you, were like the gentleman who's the attorney, how can he really feel that he can't read and write? That blew me away. But
You a lawyer.
that's, and I said that's all you did was read it. But so, and you passed the bar. And so, but he had a cognitive distortion about himself
Mhm.
that needed to be worked through. There were things that were told to him. And when we're children, we have no filters. We don't know how to filter information. We have no way of putting up emotional boundaries, right? There's adults that have, I work on boundaries all the time with clients. So as a child, everything you hear, you believe, positive, negative, good, bad, whatever. You believe that. And a lot of it is false, but you believe that and you accept it as true and it becomes part of your world and your worldview until it doesn't.
Wow. And let me just be facetious.
Okay.
Let's be farcical and sardonic. I believed in the tooth fairy as a
That's
child. You
yes.
know, and
And there
we
was
did
none.
right. Like, you know what? The layers of all the falsehoods that
Yes.
I've eaten in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and now that we are adults,
Mm-hmm.
you just filtering through some of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's some
Well,
work within
let's
itself.
go here. Let's go here. Who do you think is helping to create those things in the beginning and early when you're vulnerable? The enemy. And so as the enemy puts that in there, then he's like, all right, I'll be back, right? Let you go for a little while. Then pops on up later and starts to mess with those things that you believed and felt about yourself earlier, right? When it's time for you, maybe pastor, to speak in another country. And he says, they don't want to hear nothing from you, and starts messing with some of your, you know what I'm saying, some insecurities you might have had from the past. And he's talking to you about that, and you don't have anything to counteract that with. You see what I'm saying? So that when we have those falsities in our thinking, the enemy comes in and capitalizes on that. So it is very important to know the truth about yourself.
My. Listen, love, we are not out of talk, but we are out of time.
Okay.
Because listen,
We're not out of talk. You're right, but we're out of time. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's my radio handle.
I will be back. I will be back. Just let
My
me know.
gosh, this will be also, and the listening audience knows here, this will be played on the radio show
Mhm.
soon. And let me just pause and say, on all of the podcast channels, I gotta get you. You just need to know where you're going to be heard:
Okay.
Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora app, Google Podcast, Amazon Audible, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and one in India, which I've never learned how to pronounce.
Uh-huh.
And
Everywhere, basically.
everywhere. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful for the Yolanda and Cornelius show. This is a spinoff of that. We're grateful for you, uh, Lady
I'm
Genesis.
grateful for you. I'm humbled, by even the invitation to come, you know what I mean, and speak to you and to your audience. I really am,
To
because
our
this is
audience,
what I
our
do.
audience, our
Okay.
audience. I
Our
want to
audience.
be honest.
This is just what I do. This is just what I do, and so I appreciate the invitation, and for, the listening and to be open to hearing what I have to say and what I have to bring.
Wonderful. Uh, do you mind putting the cash app, or you want to text it to me, or you now don't play? You don't do that. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I don't
I
really
got
do
you. We're
that.
not gonna do it.
Yeah,
We're not gonna do
yeah, I don't
it.
really do the fashion.
How can people reach out to you?
Yeah. So I have a work. Some people like to call and text, and then I also have an Instagram. So if you want to call and or text me, it's should I just say the number now?
Yeah, and I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna yeah.
Okay. 704 2
704.
258 1611. And on Instagram, it's kingdom_therapist. So that's easy. Kingdom_therapist on Instagram.
Let me type it. Kingdom.
hmm
Kingdom_therapist.
Yep. And my picture will pop up, and just people message me there, and I get back to everybody. So yeah.
Let me see. Therapist is THER.
THERAPIST.
Gotcha. There we
Mhm.
go. Let me see. Does that look good? Does that look right?
That's it right there. That
So
is it right there. That's
there
me.
we go. So we're
Yes.
grateful.
And I welcome, people to come and
Mhm.
reach out. And yeah, it's my pleasure.
Your pleasure.
hmm
Um, your pleasure, my pleasure. Like we're gonna talk offline when we shut it down just for a minute. I just
Okay.
want to hear listen, I want to hear the door fall again.
Listen, it might.
I want to hear the door fall. I
Dog
love
might bark. This is my office right behind me,
it.
but
Got
this
you.
is the sitting room in my bedroom.
Got you. Got you.
Yes. Praise God. Praise him. You hear me?
Praise him. Praise.
Yes.
Well, listen, folks, thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Cornelius, Lady Genesis. I mean, Martin, Lady Genesis Martin. Listen, she is the bomb.com. We need to bring her here by any means necessary. We need to make sure this message of hope gets out to the communities of faith in the world, in our networking and net building, because she's offering hope. She's not only trained to do this, she's graced to do it. See, that's the thing. You
hmm
can go get somebody that's trained, but you want somebody that has grace on their life for this. Like I'm anointed to preach, like I'm anointed to teach and lead. She has the anointing as well to do some things in your life. So I'm grateful, Lady G. Any last
Lady
words
G.
before we get off of here? Anything you want to say?
You know what? I just want to say, again, I appreciate being the exposure to your audience. I hope that people were able to glean something from what I shared today. I hope some of this information was helpful and that they can take it and sort of absorb it, and hopefully it's healing in a way. That's really what I'm about, is healing people emotionally.
Emotionally. Well, hey, folks, don't move, Lady G. We're gonna
Okay.
play this outro. Just stay here for a second. I'm gonna come back and
I'm right here.
we're gonna have our powwow. Thank you for tuning in today to
Thank you,
Conversations
everyone.
with Cornelius. Thank you, Lady G, for being with us. It was truly a blessing.
Thank you, Pastor
Blessing.
Cornelius.
It was a blessing. It was a blessing. Tell your daughter, do some, make a movement. I want to hear the door slam. I want to hear the door slam.
It's a true.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Cornelius. Please follow me on my social media platforms: Facebook, Cornelius A. Hill; Instagram, Arne Hill; Twitter, Hill Cornelius; and YouTube, Cornelius Hill. Now do me a favor, like,